Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is Thursday, March 16th. All right, so the market was up today. I did a video earlier today where I talked about, again, the big picture, man. Astrophysics. Looking deep into the universe. What is the big picture? A lot of you are laughing at me. Actually, tomorrow, believe it or not, tomorrow I am going to have the podcast with Louis Borsellino. I think I mentioned that. Louis Borsellino was the biggest and most dominant and influential S&P trader on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange back like in the 80s and the 90s when we used to have open outcry. And what a guy. I can't say I'm close friends with him, but I know him, and he's very gracious, and he has agreed, and we had a glitch the other day where it didn't happen, but I think it's going to happen tomorrow when we get it all recorded. I'll put it up. But really incredible guy, tough guy from the streets of Chicago. And just dominated the S&P pit to the point where you had firms like Goldman Sachs and Solomon Brothers and Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch and all these big firms, they employed spotters in the pit just calling up to the desks on Wall Street saying, "What's Louis doing? What's he doing? What?" Can you imagine that? We're going to talk to him about that. Really incredible. He's since switched careers, which I want to find out about because it's, I guess many people in the course of their lives, they switch careers. I think it's like an average of something like 8 times, but he's made a lot of money and he's into something else. I think he's into cybersecurity or something like that. Anyway, let's talk about the market today, folks. My intention earlier was to keep you focused on the big picture, and the big picture, of course, what I always talk about are the fiscal flows, like that's the swimming pool, that's what's coming in, that provides, those are the financial assets which are used, in every shape and form you can imagine, but also has to do with the stock market and investments and income. And even to pay taxes. I mean, like I said, the money has to go in first before you can pay your taxes. This whole notion that, my taxes pay for government spending. They don't. I mean, they do in a sense, but the government has to put the money in there first, and then you earn it. And you might not earn it directly from the government. I mean, you might not be like a defense contractor that has a direct account with the government, but just through the system, the way the money's distributed in the economy, and your ability to earn that, your prowess, your cleverness to earn that, you get some of that and you give some of it back, and that's the way the system is set up. So but I admit that even sometimes I like to use this metaphor or analogy, like it's my taxes, I don't want to pay for this, because let's use the other side's argument against them. I think it's a very influential thing to do. Anyway, the market was up. It was up on some accord with a bunch of banks that are going to pony up some money again for this SVB situation. And what I said yesterday in my video was that the Fed is already contributing almost $300 billion annually interest on reserves. I mean, that's just going to accrue to bank assets, bank capital. And so I don't see what the problem is. I really don't see what the problem is. You got a wealthy bank in Silicon Valley where most of the depositors had way more than $250,000. They're not poor. this is not a systemic crisis, and we're starting to see that realization emerge. So I never thought it was a big thing. And for me, again, astrophysics, I look at the big picture. I remember the name of that telescope right now. That's not the Hubble telescope. That is the James Webb telescope that's out there like a million. NASA's incredible. And NASA's got a small budget, by the way. It's like $4 billion. NASA's incredible. We build this telescope. It's like a million miles out into space, and it could see into the deepest, darkest, earliest reaches of the universe. And it's to me, that's really, really fascinating. Anyway, let's get back to the markets, okay? I don't see this as a systemic crisis. I used the analogy this afternoon of the super pumper. My father was a FDNY firefighter in New York, and this was like going back in the 60s and the early 70s when they created a pumper engine that was so powerful it could just like knock down buildings, like the flow of the water. And so like now in our economy, every once in a while we have these things that flare up, and you have, you know, the power really through fiscal to knock these things out. Now you might say, well, isn't it the power of, Mike, isn't it the power of monetary policy? In some cases it is, but in most cases, unfortunately, monetary policy just like is adding gasoline to the fire. Like when the Fed is dumping trillions of dollars onto bank balance sheets to the point where the Fed has to go and create a separate vehicle, just a separate facility, just so the banks have a place to stash those reserves, because otherwise they're going to be out of compliance with the regulatory stipulations. I mean, that's a crazy system. That's a crazy system. It all boils down to the fiscal, and as I've said before, that the only thing that really bothers me is what's going to happen around the time, you know, June, when June comes, and we have to have some kind of a resolution with the debt ceiling, because if we don't, then that's when we get into this kind of vicious spiral where, you know, well, the government's only going to be able to spend what it takes in taxes, and then it's going to have to cut spending, and then taxes is going to be less, and then it's going to have to cut spending even more, and then you know, it goes on and on and on, and we have this, you know, it's the opposite of what we have now, where it's not the swimming pool filling up, it's a swimming pool draining like perpetually. All right, and that's not a good thing. So I hope that's not going to happen. If it will, some people who are my subscribers, they ask me now, oh, let's strategize, let's figure it out. I've always said, like, we have time to figure this stuff out. It's not happening right now. We'll know what the outcome is. The beauty of the system is that everything is public. The government tells you what they're going to do. Congress tells you what it's going to do by virtue of, you know, its vote. And what the president does. So we'll know. And we'll have the ability to strategize once we know. Hopefully it won't be a negative outcome, because I just think that's just not only going to be bad for the markets, obviously, it's going to be bad for society. It's just going to be bad in general. And as things were not bad enough, I don't think we want to be in a situation where it's going to get much worse. Today we had the ECB raise interest rates by 50 basis points. I called that a mistake. I'm impressed. I have to say I am impressed by the strength of the euro. I've been playing the euro from the long side now for several months. I've been doing very, very well. I took profits today when the ECB raised interest rates. I'd like to buy the euro at a lower level, let's say euro dollar in the 105 something handle, like the low 105 something handle. We'll see. That didn't happen today. I mean, we settled above 106. And it's just, again, it's a fascinating thing to watch how the central banks are so wedded to their orthodoxy about, how to combat inflation with higher interest rates, when we've seen so many examples of how the opposite is actually true. So let them do what they do. Let us take advantage of that from knowledge, from understanding, from information. And everything should work out okay in the end, as long as we have patience and, we have that mental game. There's an interesting book that I read recently, just as a kind of a weird segue. And I don't know if it's easily applicable to everything that we do in life. If you're going through what you consider to be tough times or difficult times in the market, there's a book written by an author, late. He's dead now, but his name was Viktor Frankl, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a Jew who was put in a concentration camp. I believe it was in Auschwitz in the 1940s. And he wrote about his experiences there, and he wrote about how, like, the only thing you had, because everything was taken away from you, your freedom was taken away from you, your ability to move around, to do whatever you wanted, everything was taken away from you. Everything was your family was taken away from you. Your friends were taken away from you. Your children, everything was taken away from you. The only thing you had was the way you framed it in your mind. And I know that for us, it's easy for us to say that because everybody's experiences are relative. I don't have to have been in a concentration camp to feel like sometimes, life is shit and life is hard and life is tough. But I get the idea. I get the idea that, the framing of how we perceive things, of how we react to things, of our attitudes towards them, that's the only thing that we control. But by the same token, I will say that that's also a hard thing. And I would also add, like I just said, everybody's experiences are relative. Like for a child, if they have a toy, their favorite toy, and that toy gets broken or lost, that's the worst thing in the world to that child. I mean, that's their frame of reference. So, not to deride or what Viktor Frankl wrote, but if you get a chance, and it's an audio book too, you can get this on Amazon or whatever. I would recommend everybody read this book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I don't know if that would add anything to your perspective of how you see things, because I know a lot of people, when it comes to their finances, and it's understandable, I get it. Like your 401k is going down, your investments are going down, things look like shit, the media is publishing all this stuff like we got a banking crisis, we got this going on, we got a bank going under, we got the Fed, we got that. But what is all this in the big picture? Astrophysics. The universe is, at least the known universe that scientists can determine, is 14 billion years old. We live, 78 years is the average lifespan of a human male here in the United States. That's sad. I hope to live a little bit more. But I mean, we have no recollection of the last, 14 billion years. So everything is relative, and everything you have the ability to put everything in perspective. That's all I'm saying. And to get freaked out, here's what I do every day. Here's what I do every day. I say to you guys, is the swimming pool filling up or is it going down? And when it's going down, is that a permanent drain? Like the debt ceiling, that might be. But up until now, are these things a permanent drain? No, they're temporary drains. And everybody's, oh my God, and this is terrible, and this is horrible, and look what's going on, and it's a crisis, and that's all you read about. And if you read the financial media, you're gonna fucking go crazy. You might as well just put a gun to your head. So that's all I'm saying. Perspective. Get the book, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Bye.